Now I think we can start the webinar. Thank you everybody for joining today. I would like to inform you that this webinar, as we mentioned before, will be recorded, so we can share the video later on for the people who didn't have the opportunity to watch it. At the same time, we received a lot of interest from stakeholders and other universities around Europe to join this webinar, but unfortunately the platform is not allowing us to have more than 200 participants. This is why we decided to live stream this webinar, so it's visible from our social media channels right now. I hope this is okay, and this information was also shared to you in advance, just to be clear. Now let's move on with the practicalities before we continue with the main topic of the webinar. So this is the agenda points for today. We will have an introduction for the ESN activities. That's the activities that the Erasmus Student Network did during the coronavirus outbreak. Then we will move on to present the research report that we conducted a few weeks ago. And the report will be presented by Wim Gabriels, our policy officer, for the policy officer of ES International, and Rasmus Aberg, the director of ESN International. After that, we have the pleasure to have in this webinar today Mr. Milan Zver, who is a member of the European Parliament, and not only, but he's also the standing rapporteur of the European Commission for the Erasmus Plus program, for the program that starts in 2021 to 2027. And I think we'll have a nice discussion there. And thank you, Mr. Zver, for joining us today. Later on, we will move with a presentation from the European Commission, where they will present us the current state of play and the measures that the European Commission took so far, and also we'll discuss about the future step. And this will be presented by Ms. Sophia Eriksson, who is the director of the DGAC on behalf of the European Commission. And after that, we will have time for a round of questions. So you can, for example, if there is something that you would like to comment, or if there is something that you want to ask the Erasmus Student Network, or also the other speakers from the European Commission or from the Parliament, you will have the chance to do so. Moving on, I will just. Before actually start the presentation, I will try to introduce you to the platform, just for you to be easier. You can see in this slide. So, for example, if you want to write something, there is the text where you can use it to write your comments. And also there is another function in case that you want to address a question. So you can see it on the text below. So this is what I was just saying. You can see it on the slides. So if you want to address a question, please press the question mark and write your question. If it is just a comment, you can write it on the public chat. Yep, moving on. This is how it appears and this is the main room that you see also yourselves right now. And another thing, so if you go to the text, on the text, you can see in the right there is this little hand where you can press it in order to give you the speak, so to give you the floor. So if you want to talk, please raise your hand, as it says there. But also you can interact by liking a comment, or if something that the speakers say, you can press the agree button or the disagree. And yeah, below you can see the other functionalities that this platform offers. Yep, and I think that's it when it comes to the technicalities. we can move on, where I will present very briefly the actions that ESN has taken so far. We know that this outbreak, it was very challenging, not only for the students, but mostly for the students. It was also challenging for higher education institutions and all the practitioners working in the higher education sectors and the decision makers. And for us, for the Erasmus Student Network, our main purpose is to support international students, and this is what we have been doing for the past 30 years. When the outbreak started, we actually dropped everything, all the initiatives that we were doing. We canceled all our events, and we focused on supporting the students during these challenging times. And we wanted to be next to the higher education institutions as well, to the Erasmus Plus offices, to the national agencies, but also to the European Commission, in order to provide support, because we know that the need was actually very. There was a lot of demand from students. What we did from the first moment, we had contact with the students. We tried to translate the information, because if you're an international student in a foreign country, most often the government or the national authorities, they communicate this important information in the native language, and this is very difficult for the students to follow. This is what ESN was doing, because we have a very direct contact with the students, so we're trying to provide the most important information for them, and we're also supporting the international relation offices and the Erasmus Plus offices to push the very important information to the students. So other actions that we took, from the first moment, we tried to change the way that we are organizing our activities. After 3 weeks of lockdown, you know that the students were at their houses, and especially for the students who are living abroad, who don't have any friends, probably it will be very, very challenging. So we want to find ways to connect the international students, even in the case where they couldn't physically interact with other people. That's why we moved all of our ESN activities online, so they can still meet friends and interact with other cultures while they were on Erasmus. We also organized a webinar. It was 1 month ago. This webinar was organized together with the European Students' Union in order to collect the challenges that the international students are facing, and also to direct these concerns to the European Commission, so they can also go with more decision-making processes to solve the challenges. And we are working very closely with the European Students' Union, because also their local unions in the universities, they have very close contacts with the students. So both ESN and ESU, we have a very close coordination in order to support the students in this challenging time. From the first moment, while we're doing these kind of activities to support the students, we wanted also to see what is happening on the ground. This is why we decided to launch a European-wide survey in order to have evidence-based information and see what the students say in order to change the situation and make it better for the students. We will come back to other initiatives later on, but I think it's the most important part is to present the survey and see directly what are the students' needs and what are what were their challenges in the first few weeks when the survey was conducted. So now I will pass the floor to my colleagues Wim and Rasmus, who are going to present the main findings of the survey, and then we can continue with the rest of the agenda.
Right. Thank you, Kostis. Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As Kostis said, I will go through the report together with Wim, my colleague. So the very first, I will say, is a little bit about the methodology. So the survey was open from the 19th to the 30th of March. So this is, as you probably know, a very turbulent time in Europe. A lot of things were happening. It felt like we got updates about the coronavirus almost every day. Something new was happening. This means that the survey has been closed for more than a month now, so some of the challenges that are identified here in this report, they might have been addressed already by the national agencies, by the universities, by the commission, by someone else. We got 22,000 responses, which is something we're very, very happy for. We promoted it as much as we could on all ESN communication channels, but we also got a lot of help to distribute the survey. So individual universities, national agencies, and the European Commission helped us with this. Probably some of you who joined the webinar helped us with the dissemination, so thank you very much to all of you. The target group of the survey was international students in Europe, or people who are on an exchange in Europe. So these students, they came from really all over the world, 125 different nationalities. Most of them were Erasmus students, and almost all of them were on an exchange in one of the countries where we have an ESN section or an ESN member country. So enough with the methodology. Now we're going to look a little bit at the impact that the coronavirus crisis had on the students. First of all, what happened with the mobility periods? We asked the students this, and it's quite clear that about 2/3 of the mobility periods, they continued in one form or another. About a quarter, 25% of the mobility periods were cancelled. But a lot of them, the students, they wrote in the comments, in the open fields, that it seems the mobility period will continue, but it might be that it's cancelled, or it seems it will be cancelled, but I'm not sure. So there's a great deal of uncertainty in this question, but indeed it seems most of them did continue in some form. Also very interesting is that the responses we got changed during the time that the survey was open. So as I already said, we had it open from the 19th to the 30th of March, and here on the left part of the screen you can see how the answers varied during this time. So 42% said that they stayed in their destination, and 40% say that they returned home. But the blue line on the left chart goes slowly up, meaning that more and more students during this time decided to go home. And the green line is slowly going downwards, meaning that fewer and fewer students stayed in the destination. We can maybe guess that these lines continued, so that even after we closed the survey, more students decided to return home. But this we don't really know, that's more speculation. So what happened with the class schedules of the students? Well, for almost all of them, the classes moved online, either partially online or fully online. This is no surprise. I think all of you have heard about students going online, doing classes online. Only 5% say they continued as normal, and I would guess that even by now, those 5% are probably down to 0%. But again, we don't really know that. Here, we should also note that there was a lot of expressions of disappointments for many students. Many ones pointed out in the comments that there's a problem with the technology, my professors are not prepared for this. Even a couple of students pointed out that the time difference is difficult. You know, if you're a student from Canada or from Japan, and then you go back home and you continue your classes online, that might be a factor. And also a lot of students pointed out that this is not, what an Erasmus exchange is supposed to be. During the Erasmus exchange, you're supposed to meet new friends and so on, and this is, of course, very difficult to do when you have classes online. Here is one of the students' quote, a Turkish student in Belgium. The next thing we looked at was the finances. We know from previous ESN research that the study grant that the Erasmus students get is not enough to cover all the costs while the students are abroad. This means that many students, not all, but many, they are in a pretty difficult financial situation already to begin with. So the fact that they can get a grant is very, very important. And here many of them pointed out, also in the comments, that there was a lot of uncertainty. They said they have started paying for some costs already. For example, the cost of accommodation quite often needs to be paid up front, at least a couple of months. And even if the mobility is cancelled, these are still costs that they have to pay. So a lot of students were very worried about the grants. 2/3 approximately said that it's unclear whether they will get the grant or not. 13% said that they get to keep the grant. 11% said that they will keep the full grant. And 7% said that they would have to return the grant. I also think that after we closed the survey, there has been more communication from the European Commission and from the national agencies, encouraging a very flexible use of the grant money. So hopefully these 2/3 that were unclear will have gotten at least part of the grants. Again, we really need to stress is that for students who do not get the grant and who have had a lot of costs upfront to deal with, this will be very difficult for them. And now let's look at a few other problems. So we asked the students about some major problems that we thought of that we could identify. Loss of transportation to return home, no access to basic needs, and so on, as you can see in the graphs. The good news here is that about 62% of the students said that they did not experience any of these problems, any of these 5 problems. But 37%, they experienced one or several, or in a few cases, all of these problems. So the biggest problem here was the loss of transportation to return home, followed by no access to basic needs, followed by accommodation, followed by access to medical support, and the smallest one, problems with visa or residence permit. The last one is, of course, quite a big overrepresentation for non-European students. Next, we looked at the various types of support that the students received. The biggest one was the academic support, where almost 3/4 said that they got proper academic support. This was followed by social support, psychological support, logistical support, linguistic support, and medical support. Maybe more importantly, where did the support come from? The biggest answer here was family and or friends, with almost 70%. This was followed by host university, followed by home university, and of course in ESN we're very happy that 24% also said support from student organizations. This student organization includes ESN, but it could also be other student organization. We also asked them about how they perceive this information. Was it enough? Was it not enough? Should it be more? And so on. Some of the findings are here. 78% said that they had enough information about health and safety, while about half of them said that there is sufficient information in English or a language that is accessible for international students. And here we're going to look at 2 quotes again. And I have to point out that these quotes, one from a German student in Poland, one from a Dutch student in Portugal, are just 2 out of many, many quotes where students pointed out that it's very difficult to understand the recommendations and the requirements from the authorities and from the universities because they are in a different language. And something which we argue in ESN is that this type of information really needs to be made available in a language that international students can understand, presumably in English. So with those words, I will hand over to Wim. Wim, the stage is...
Hello everyone. Yes, I will give you a little bit more information about the health and well-being of the students and go over the recommendations and the first conclusions that we found in the report. To start off with the well-being of the students, 41% of students indicated that they experienced feelings of anxiety and stress. We can also see there in the results that students that returned home experienced less anxiety and stress than those that actually stayed in their mobility, and those that were unsure, so that those that Erasmus presented before, that said that they were not sure what was going to happen. When we compared those groups, we also noticed that they reported higher levels of anxiety and stress. 21% of students indicated that they felt isolated or excluded, which is, as ESN, we believe in an inclusive society, so we would like to have that number as close to 0 as possible, of course. Then when it comes to discrimination and racism, we can also see that 6% of students indicated that they felt discriminated based on nationality, while 4.3% indicated they felt racially profiled based on their ethnicity. But here, what's important to note is that there's a diverse group, a diverse response dependent on their nationality or ethnicity. So we could see, for example, that 24% of Italian students experienced discrimination based on their nationality, and 21% of Asian students were affected by racism, compared to 4.3% that I mentioned before. And these are the students that have experienced a feeling of discrimination or racism to a moderate, like to a great or to a very great extent. So it's not even including those that experience this a little bit. So these numbers are, yeah, very unfortunate. I can also show you, for example, here on the left, a quote that we had from a student that felt that even though they were in the destination already for more than 4 months, but by the effect of their nationality, they were profiled because of COVID-19. Then to look at what we learned, and we drew some first conclusions and recommendations that we're going to share with you here. To start off with, information provision and support measures. So Erasmus mentioned quite a lot of facts related to, something happened with the presentation. Give me a second to start it again. Okay, so what you can see here is information provision and support measures. So you can see here 3 major recommendations that we put. What is important is that information is targeted to international students, so that information is provided to them, translated in English or another accessible language that they can that you usually communicate in. What's important is that support services that are available to domestic students are also made available for the international students. So in that sense, we believe that everyone should be treated equally, so that the okay. Okay. Okay, everything seems okay again. Okay, thanks a lot. The information and the support measures. So yes, what I just said is that we want to make sure that all the information that is made available is available to domestic students as well as for international students. And then when it comes to the information, we are aware that, of course, not all universities have their own student accommodation. But what's important is that students are able to get information regarding their rights regarding their accommodation. They probably don't know what are the conditions to cancel a contract and how to continue when they're returning back to their home. So it's important that this type of information is made available. Then when it comes to the financial impact, we recommend that students should receive adequate funding to cover the costs that they have incurred. As Erasmus mentioned, 65% of the students mentioned that they weren't sure yet what is happening. So it's important that from now on, students get this information, and that adequate funding is foreseen. ESN, together with ESO and EUF, also started a new campaign in light of all of this, to kind of make sure that students in the next Erasmus program start off with a slightly higher baseline of funding to get a better overview and to get more support for their grant. Then when it comes to online facilitation, we also want to make sure that there is equal access to online learning tools for students, and that it's important that the universities and other organizations are mindful of the diversity in student population, so that everyone has access. Like Erasmus already mentioned, for example, if a student returned back to Japan, it's important that this type of small details are kept in mind, so that people can study on their own pace and have access to all of the online tools. What's important as well is that education is done within actions that allow for interaction among students. So that it's not only online lectures that are being given, but that online interaction is advocated. And ESN here ourselves, we've also been working quite a lot on different initiatives, everything with the hashtag Erasmus at home, where under the umbrella Erasmus at home, we tried to make sure that we gathered all of the initiatives and activities that are happening to support international students, making them feel connected to the rest of the world. One of the latest activities that we have done is Erasmus versus Boredom, where we did a competition to help people creatively express how they are dealing with the confinement, and the results will be broadcasted soon, or published later today or tomorrow. When it comes to the recovery strategy, we believe it's really important to really plan well ahead. We are assuming, and I think many of you share this fear, that there will be a decrease in mobility in the next coming months and years, maybe. So it's important that we plan out a good recovery process, and that this type of things are coordinated through the national agency, through the European Commission, through the European Parliament, to make sure that this type of that the mobility, student mobility, gets back on track after the COVID outbreak has been contained. Now, this is very closely linked to the following topic, which is diversity and inclusion. You see here a quote from Antonio Guterres, from the Secretary-General from the UN, who also mentioned that it's usually students from disadvantaged backgrounds, young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, that are most at risk of suffering from losses due to COVID-19. Both on their healthcare, but also the financial consequences that this has for students from disadvantaged backgrounds will be higher. So what we want to make sure is that in this process, solutions for students from less advantaged backgrounds are included in the emergency response. And that equity, diversity, and inclusion is included to address the needs of disadvantaged students in the recovery process. So not only in the emergency response that was given by university, but also in trying to set up and increase so to make sure that equity, diversity is also included in the recovery plans, and to make sure that in the future, when we return to student mobility, this is included as well. In order to support this, ESN has started, together with a partnership of 9 different partners, a project to support and enhance the participation of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, where we try to make sure that more students from disadvantaged backgrounds can take part, and when they take part, that they interact more with local communities and underrepresented groups to increase intercultural exchanges. This is the Social Inclusion and Engagement in Mobility project. So here, ESN has also been trying to make sure that in the future, answers to these problems are found. And as a final remark is that we believe in unity and diversity, and what's important is that we are very sad to see that students are experiencing racism or discrimination. So it's important that students, that there is more transnational and cross-sectoral collaboration in order to stimulate the compensation of the impacts of the crisis. Now, if the presentation is not enough, we will also show a quick video that we have. I think I have to close this one, and I can show you a video that was prepared by the European Commission with support with ESN, where we see how students are experiencing this in real life. I'm going to broadcast this now. I hope all of it works well with the audio.
Hola, mi nombre es Julia.
I'm an Erasmus student from Italy.
J'étudie le journalisme
à Turku en Finlande.
Julia is among nearly half of the 165,000 Erasmus students who decided to stay in their host country after the COVID-19 outbreak in March.
Tenía miedo a que si me fuera a casa, todo el trabajo duro que me había dedicado a hacer aquí durante todos esos meses no valiera para nada. Mi Erasmus cambió de la noche a la mañana, ya nada da igual. Todas las actividades físicas, académicas, lúdicas que eran presenciales.
Comme on n'a pas de confinement, on a le droit de sortir et que la Finlande c'est comme un pays de nature et donc on visite pas mal de sites naturels. Comme on vit tous ensemble dans une communauté Erasmus ici dans un village étudiant, on se sent pas énormément impacté.
Sarah was studying in Greece. She preferred to return home to Italy for the duration of the quarantine.
Affrontare una situazione di questo tipo a casa è molto più rassicurante rispetto a doverla affrontare a molti chilometri di distanza.
Like for half of Erasmus students, Sarah's host university has moved teaching online.
Abbiamo ricominciato le lezioni online e tutti i professori si sono dimostrati estremamente disponibili.
The EU will ensure exchange students will not lose their academic year or credits by allowing as much flexibility to the programme as possible.
Les professeurs continuent à nous suivre quand même, on ne se sent pas du tout laissé de côté. C'est vrai que c'est vachement important d'avoir encore de quoi étudier, de se sentir encore étudiant.
Some 5,000 EU volunteers from the Solidarity Corps have also been stopped in their tracks by the pandemic. MEPs from the Education Committee have suggested that volunteers repurpose their work in their home country to help fight the social impact of COVID-19. Parliament is also calling for a consistent policy across member states so that all Erasmus beneficiaries are treated equally and are reimbursed any extra costs.
I'm very sorry for the video. We'll share it all with all participants so you can also have a look at it.
Yes, indeed, we can share it. We saw most of the video. That's good anyway. But yeah, a small correction here. This video was made by the European Parliament, not by the European Commission, and I think this is also a nice transition. So we can go with Mr. Zver to have his intervention, and maybe he can inform us about the position of the European Parliament. How do they see this situation? Because we saw also in the past days that new communication came out from the Parliament. So, Mr. Zver, can you hear us now? Okay,
yes,
great.
I can. What about you? It's okay. Connection?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, dear representatives of the Erasmus Student Network of the European Commission, national and organizations, dear friends of Erasmus Plus program, Erasmus students search on Erasmus Plus students in time of COVID-19 crisis. Results have confirmed many of my concerns. 55% of mobility exchanges have been cancelled. 2/3 of exchange students were not sure that they will receive their Erasmus Plus grant. Some students were stuck abroad and could not return home, and we have heard many other things. As standing rapporteur of European Parliament for Erasmus Plus program, I was worried as seen that the European Commission and national agencies not take decisive action at the very beginning, provide clear guidance, or simply reassure students and participating organizations who were impacted by the crisis that they were there to help them. Some national agency web pages did not contain any information related to COVID crisis at all. It was not clear that all extra costs due to COVID-19 would be reimbursed to exchange students. The Commission has now taken steps, but there is still a lot to be done. Students need to be 100% certain that all extra costs will be reimbursed and that they will receive their Erasmus Plus grant. We need to do everything that is possible so that they don't lose the academic year. The work of the European Parliament's Culture Committee is in line with the results of the research. Among other things, we sent a letter to the Commission about some these concerns, like academic credits, grants, distinctions between mobility exchange and virtual learning, etc., etc. We proposed also some suggestions about the meetings, etc., etc. But dear friends, I believe that we are on a good path in terms of fighting acute problems that arise from the COVID-19 crisis. But there is still a lot of work to be done in order to overcome the long-lasting consequences of the crisis. I wait hardly this Wednesday when the Commission is due to present the new proposal for the so-called Corona MF. I hope that the new Corona MFF finds the right balance between addressing the crisis and supporting programs that are vital for young people in Europe. And at the end, I can assure you that the Culture Committee will continue with its mission to work for benefit of whole Erasmus Plus family and all European citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Many things that you mentioned also about the flexibility of the grants and yeah, the need that the students should be reimbursed. This is something that also we saw from the survey. The financial aspect was the main concern for the students as well, and we are very happy that the European Commission, but also the universities took this in consideration. As it was expected, of course. It is not easy in all cases because we have to see this in case by case, because there are situations that unfortunately we cannot reimburse everybody. But what we are advocating in ESN is for the universities and the European Commission to give this flexibility which they gave, and we are very happy to see this. So you all saw the results of the survey, and I have to just remind again that this survey was conducted in the very first days and weeks when this outbreak happened. Since then, the situation has been improved a lot, and this is thanks to the coordinated approach that we took in whole Europe. Also, I see some comments here that maybe we're focusing a lot in EU students, but there are a lot of students taking part in the Erasmus Plus program from EU countries, and they are taking part through the international creative mobility. I think we have also some colleagues in this call from DGAC who are responsible for this chapter of the program. So maybe later on we can hear also some comments about this. Now I will give the floor to the European Commission. I'm not sure if Ms. Sophia Eriksson is here. So you can take the floor and please, you can present, you have the presentation here, the PowerPoint. I see Vanessa.
Yes, good afternoon. Sophia sent her apologies. She has problems connecting with the iPad, so she proposes that I replace her. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. So thank you. I would like to thank ESN and all the ESN volunteers very warmly. You have done and you continue doing a fantastic job in supporting the Erasmus students. Indeed, as your survey has shown, it has been extremely difficult for many of them, especially just after the closure of the universities. They didn't have a lot of information the first days, and being in a country where they did not always master the language, it was quite stressful. And the ESN and ESU as well have done a fantastic job in supporting them. So really well done for that. So I will comment maybe on some elements of your survey, but before that, I would like to recall what our President of the European Commission said, that it's really European citizens are looking at the reaction of Europe on how to deal with this pandemic, and we are really dealing with the lives of people, current lives, but also future lives. And such a pandemic requires a coordinated European action, because the virus knows no borders. So I will show you in a moment what we've done, what we could do at European level to provide support. So of course we've seen member states have dealt with the situation in different ways. The strategies of confinement have been different from countries to countries, but yet they are facing, and universities and higher education institutions are facing common challenges. So thanks to the Croatian presidency, education ministers have been in touch regularly together with our commissioner, Maria Gabriel. You have the dates here appearing on the slide. And on top of that, they asked us to set up a collaborative platform with their ministries, different ministries from the member states, to share good practices on how to deal with these common challenges. And this is what we have done. We are meeting with them every week, both for schools and both for higher education. There are many different common challenges, and you mentioned many of them during the previous presentation. First, the first challenge was maintaining the continuation of the learning and teaching activities. So we've seen a very massive and quick switch to online teaching and learning activities to ensure continuity for the students, and all higher education institutions should be highly praised for that. Now, of course, this has been an ad hoc response to an urgent situation. We know that the pedagogy and the quality of this online learning is not only there. It depends very much from institution to institution. Not all of them were ready for that, so still a lot of work needs to be done to ensure the quality. So we discussed together a lot on how to provide additional support to the teachers to ensure the quality of this digital learning. They discussed as well now the planning of the examinations, and we are aware that it creates a lot of stress for the students, including international students. Not all of them have received information yet on when and how the exams will take place, and will take place online. Others, the dates have been postponed. They are discussing as well about admissions. And here our Commissioner Maria Gabriel launched a strong call towards all the member states and their higher education institutions to make sure that higher education institutions can be as flexible as possible in the timing of these admissions, to make sure to take into account basically of the postponement of these examinations. And this is why now we are collecting at European level all the calendar and the timing of these examinations, so that universities and higher education institutions can take it into account when they are taking decisions for the admissions, especially for the international students. Equity of access to IT infrastructure is also an issue. The mental health of students, but also of teachers. And the recognition of this mobility abroad. It is essential that students are not penalized about this situation, and make sure that they will not lose their academic year. So this is why we are in close contact with the NARIX Center to make sure that that recognition will be ensured. Now let me move to so the state of play, where we are in higher education. I already addressed it before. So we need to address now urgently the digital divide in terms of access to IT infrastructure for higher education institutions, but also make sure that all students can get access and that no one is left behind. The quality of course, of this digital learning is essential. So this is why we are and we will continue through the Erasmus program to invest in the training of teachers and lecturers, and to support the students. So let me move to the next slide to show how we've responded so far together with the Erasmus Plus national agencies to the support of the students. So you mentioned in the survey that almost 2/3 of the students' mobility periods continued, which is very good indeed. We encouraged all the Erasmus Plus national agencies to invoke the force majeure to make sure that the mobility can continue either in the host country or in the sending country through online distance learning wherever possible. We also encourage the higher education institutions to ensure the recognition of these activities, even if they are taken online, either in the host country or the sending country. This is absolutely essential. As long as the learning outcomes are achieved, they should be recognized according to the learning agreement. And we asked for full flexibility on the mobility arrangements. And again, make sure that the mobility and the learning outcomes and the CTS credits associated with it are fully recognized. Now, regarding the experience of major problems faced by the students during their mobility, well, I would like to thank very much ESN and ESU. We've been in very close contact from the very beginning. We already had webinars together, which was very important for us, together with the Erasmus Plus national agencies and universities, to be able to take actions as quickly as we could to address this point. So we offer the full flexibility with the Erasmus grant to address and to cover unforeseen expenses. We are aware that when students come back, they still have to pay for still accommodation or repatriation costs. So this can be covered through this force majeure clause. And all Erasmus Plus national agencies, together with their higher education institutions, are really doing their best to provide a maximum support to the students. And we heard the European Parliament and Mr. Zver asking for 100% full support, and you can be reassured that with this force majeure clause, of course, students can get ensured to get the maximum support. Now, regarding the grants again, and all the questions that students have on top of maintaining the Erasmus Plus grants and ensuring the full recognition of the learning outcomes, we also published question and answers, and you can see the link here in the slides, and there will be regular updates of these questions and answers. I see that you do not all hear me. I will try to come closer so that you can hear me better, hopefully. So we have published question and answers. You can see the link there addressing all the questions from the students, and we keep, thank you, Elena, and we keep updating them regularly thanks to the feedback from either ESN, ESU, the higher education institutions, or the Erasmus Plus national agencies. So really welcome this feedback so that we can react and answer as quickly as possible. Now, regarding the move to this online classes. So, as I said, it's very important, the recognition of this digital learning, and here we've given instructions, very clear instructions to all higher education institutions to recognize all these learning outcomes. Now, what can we do at European level to address these needs to provide online learning of high quality? We have for many years funded and supported Erasmus Plus funded projects. So, and we can learn a lot from them. They have developed guidelines, materials, toolkits on how to ensure online learning of high quality. So we have shared these outcomes on this webpage. You can find the link there on the slide to the webpage, and we are again updating regularly this webpage so that we can share as much as possible the outcomes from the Erasmus Plus program. I would like to mention that we have also postponed all the deadlines for the coming Erasmus Plus calls so that higher education institutions can better cope with it. And we are very happy to see that we have received a 26% increase in the submission of Erasmus Plus strategic partnerships, where distance and online learning was among the priorities. And among the 12,000 applications that we received last week, about 50% are addressing online learning, which are very good news. We are also exploring the possibility of funding more of these projects, or if there need be to launch an additional call later this autumn, because we have heard the need from higher education institutions from more support in that direction. And this will be part of the Digital Education Action Plan that we plan to release at the beginning of this summer. So an action plan at European level to provide a maximum support to higher education institutions. Another issue that we are exploring as well is the blended mobility opportunities. So now we have switched quite massively from physical to online learning. Now comes the questions about the next semester, the next autumn period. And we have heard the worries and the questions from the students. Will they be able to follow an Erasmus experience in the next semester? Will higher education institutions stop the mobility for next semester? This is not what we would recommend. Our recommendation would be to continue, of course, starting with a virtual mobility as long as necessary, and then complementing it as soon as it will be possible with virtual elements. So we are exploring now how to make it happening as from the next semester, and we will communicate very soon about it to provide this support to all higher education institutions and students across Europe. We are as well discussing with the higher education institutions about their key role in providing as well lifelong learning opportunities to support as well the workforce to upskill and reskill in view of the very difficult situation that many people will face. So we have set up an expert group with experts from all the member states to address the need for shorter learning courses and how to ensure the recognition through micro-credentials. So we are going to accelerate the work in that direction. Some European universities alliances have started the work with it, and we are in close touch with them and with these experts. We'll have a first meeting on 26th of May, and we plan to release a report and an action plan early this autumn. I would like to mention as well that we had a webinar recently last week with 17 European universities that are involving hundreds of higher education institutions that are going to move forward now quicker than foreseen with the setup of virtual inter-university campuses, and with setting up, pulling together their online courses on offer for their students, and moving as well towards the micro credentials. So you see, we are working hand in hand with the Erasmus Plus national agencies, with the higher education institutions to provide quick but yet relevant solutions for the crisis, but also to take the lessons from this crisis and to prepare for the world after this crisis, which will be different from the current one before the crisis. So thank you very much, and again, big thanks to all the higher education institutions and ESN and ASU, which are working round the clock to provide the best support they can to all the students across Europe and also beyond Europe. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you a lot for this concrete presentation and the information that you shared with us. I see that we have already a lot of questions from participants in the text. Many of the questions, though, I think they were you covered them with your presentation. But I would like to ask the participants if if their question was not addressed. So please try to write your question again, but please use the question mode. So if you go on the chat, on the text below, you will see two modes, the public one and a question. Yes, exactly as Camille is doing right now. And then it will be easier for us to project the question here on the screen. But before we go with the first question, we had a comment a few minutes ago about the situation of students from non-EU countries. And I see that there is a lot of interest to see what is happening with international credit mobility. And your colleague Benedict from DGAC, who is working on the international cooperation unit, I think he wanted to jump in this discussion. So Benedict, I gave you presenter mode, so now you can open your microphone, I think. Can you try to open your microphone?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this webinar. And thank you to Vanessa, who has already shared with you some thorough information. I will be very brief. So just to say that in principle, the same conditions for keeping the grant and to cover additional costs due to COVID-19 also apply to the students funded by international credit mobility. So it has been important for us to align the measures as much as possible for these students. Looking back, things evolved very quickly in March and April, and our first priority was to allow for project extension and budget flexibility to enable beneficiaries to postpone planned activities with a view of implementing them at a later stage. Of course, we didn't know then that implementing activities might prove very difficult also for the next academic term, as Vanessa mentioned, maybe even also for the full academic year. So we have been in close dialogue with NAs, national agencies, and also with national Erasmus offices in partner countries. And we are counting on them to report back any concerns that they have. I have to say that so far we have very few reported issues of concern when speaking of ICM students. We are hoping that this reflects a situation where NAs have a very clear understanding of the current guidelines and that they have been able to communicate very efficiently to the beneficiaries and participants. I think at least that's my impression. Of course, we are aware that implementing physical mobility for the next term and even spring 2021 might be difficult. We are monitoring the situation closely with colleagues in EAC. So we will have to assess every option, such as blended mobility or virtual mobility, carefully. Of course, the importance of implementing activities with online learning methods shouldn't happen on the expense of the quality of the learning outcome. So again, this is something that we will have to assess before making any decision. But as far as possible, we would like to keep on aligning our measures with higher education measures. Yeah. I don't know if there are any additional questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Benedict, for clarifying this. Also, in our research report, I think we had around 1,400 replies from students from international credit mobility, where we also saw what are their challenges. And this is something that that Women Erasmus presented before. For example, for ICM students, one of the biggest barrier was the visa issue and residence permit, especially when especially when the borders were closing. The students, they had to go back to their countries, or they had to extend their presence in the host country, but the residence permit was about to expire. So we had a lot of problems with visa, but that was at least at the beginning.
Yeah, and we are aware of some issues that have been reported to us, and of course, the issuing or extension of visa is under the responsibility of the competent authorities at national level. But we believe that if the student has costs related to such an extension of the visa, these are costs that could be covered by the beneficiary as an exceptional cost due to COVID-19. So there shouldn't be any concern for the students in this regard.
Okay. Thank you for this information. Then I will suggest maybe to go to the next questions. I will try to present the questions here. Give me a moment. I'm trying to project. Okay. So just to remind you, please also let us know to whom this question is addressed when you write. We have speakers from the European Commission. We have from ESN side, in case that you have any question from us, if we can support your students if you have suggestions on how to do this. But also we have we have Milan Zver, who represents also the voice of the Parliament. So if you address a question, please indicate to whom this question is for. So the first one, would students be eligible for grants if they do virtual mobilities? Vanessa, I think you tackled this issue. I don't know if you want to comment here.
Yes, I think Camille who asked for this question. Well, we are currently, we understand it's linked to another question, when the modalities for blended mobility will be available. We understand the urgency of it, and we are working with it with all our colleagues. Of course, there are some legal and financial constraints to it in view of the current legal base that we have with the program. So we are analyzing all this. I cannot answer all your questions, unfortunately, but we plan to come back to you in the coming weeks or within a month, because we understand the urgency for all higher education institutions to plan their activities for the coming semester. So it is obvious that when you do a virtual mobility, you do not have the same cost and additional cost than when you go abroad physically. So this will need to be taken into account, obviously. But something I would like to mention, because it's related to another question that we received. It seems that some students need to pay fees for online learning activities, and here I would like to mention that you know that one of the very important commitment in the Erasmus Charter for Higher Education is that no fees should be applied for Erasmus mobility. So here we will have a strong recommendations for higher education institutions to not ask for fees for Erasmus Plus participants for online activities. So the quality assurance number here 107, maybe Benedict would like to answer that one?
Yeah, well, as I said, we have to look into how we can cater for either blended or virtual mobility for the next semester, because even blended mobility might be a challenge for participants under international credit mobility. But that is something that we still have to discuss and make a decision later on. So I cannot really answer yes or no. we will have to discuss it.
Okay, we will remain to this topic. Maybe we have this question, like to elaborate about the next semester on online activities. Maybe Vanessa wants to address this.
Yes, definitely. So we would recommend to continue all the international activities and indeed to start remotely with online activities as long as necessary. Maybe some member states were recommending to not switch from online to physical in the middle of a semester. So maybe soon take a decision to go for online activities for the next semester, at least for the international activities, and then hopefully as soon as possible, hopefully by January, then complementing it with the physical mobility. Of course, you understand that things are moving, you know, and evolving every day and every week. So it's we don't have all the answers to all the questions, but for sure we need all of us to show agility and flexibility and adapt with the situation as it will come. But definitely we would recommend, yes, to start with online activities and then resume physical when possible.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I think also we have a comment from Mr. Sver. He wanted to comment this, if I'm not mistaken. I think we lost Mr. Sver. Yes, he's not here. Okay, maybe he will join us again. But yeah, thank you for the answer. Of course, we cannot. I think it's everybody understands that we don't have all the answers right now because the situation is still changing. But yeah, we hope we'll have more clarification in the future. I will continue with another topic right now. Let's move a little bit from the online recognition and online courses. We have a question related to the budget. So, do you expect a budget reduction for Erasmus Plus 2021-2027, given the fact that most likely now universities will reduce their physical classes and increase their physical options?
Well, as you know, this is a discussion for the financial ministers, and they have not yet reached an agreement for the next instrument, for the next MFF. But we would strongly advocate for an increase in the Erasmus Plus budget as much as the European Parliament has advocated for. Why? Because even if we may see an impact on the mobility flows in the first year, nevertheless, what we are hearing from all the higher education institutions, but also beyond for the other fields as well, is that cooperation is absolutely key to address the recovery of our economy. And speaking about higher education, universities and higher education institutions have a key role to play. We need to share, to pool what we have together in terms of online courses, in terms of IT infrastructure, research infrastructure as well. So what the universities and the university networks are telling us is that we need to invest even more to accelerate the transformation of higher education institutions towards much more diversified learning pathways, to include more diversified delivery modes of higher education, online, part-time, full-time, physical, blended. And we've seen that there is the digital divide to be addressed. We see that equity is essential. We see that we need more than ever to invest in IT infrastructure, to invest in the training of the teachers and lecturers. We need budget for that. So we very much welcome the support from the European Parliament to advocate, and we need students, we need higher education institutions as well to advocate for more budget for the future program. And I've seen quite a number now of higher education stakeholders, the Coimbra Group, the Guild, Les Rues, César, advocating for more budget, more than ever, for the Erasmus Plus program for the next programming period.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. We have been advocating for a larger budget for a long time now, and we will not stop now. We will, of course, continue advocating even more. And yeah, it's especially with this COVID situation, the future is very challenging. So we believe that if we want to come back to the normality when it comes to mobilities, then we will need also a stronger budget. That's why we also showed this during our the presentation of the survey, that we launched a new campaign for a more adequate budget for the next Erasmus students. I will move on, and this time I will choose a question that goes to ESN and not to the Commission. Thank you for the question. Yes, so universities are receiving requests from students that came back to their home countries because of COVID, and after 9 months, after 1 month, they do not know where they can come back to pick up their belongings at their host country. Have you received this type of request, or do you know measures that are taken? Indeed, we know we have received this request from many students. So especially when this outbreak started, many students, they have to leave the country very urgently, so they didn't have the time to pick up their belongings. So what we are trying to do is to connect with ESN local volunteers on the ground, so they can pick up the stuff for them, and maybe keep them in their houses or in the ESN local office, and then try to ship this belongings back to the students in their countries. We are also considering to have a coordinated approach, to have a European-wide action, so we can better support the students in this direction. But unfortunately, yes, this is very relevant. We have seen it in many cases. And we are trying to, as I said, coordinate with our members. As you know, we have local organizations in 42 countries, so we have a big outreach to see what is happening all over Europe. Can I ask maybe Vanessa and Benedict to turn off your microphone when somebody talks, because I think there is a little bit of echo. Yeah, I think now it's much better. Okay, thank you. But I think when it comes to this situation about the belongings of the students, we need also coordination between the local ESN sections and the IROs. So if they hear a challenge when it comes to this, we'll have to figure out in which way we should support the students. ESN also has some international partnerships with some agencies that we can ship the belongings of the students in a better discount by using the membership card that we provide to the students, which is called ESN card. I will go to the next question. Yeah, so do you consider that the situation with the COVID-19 may have effects on the next call for proposal, such as postponing, delaying, etc.? I think this goes to Vanessa again.
Well, at this stage, we will continue as planned. Of course, we postponed and delayed the deadlines of the previous calls at the request of the beneficiaries because they were not ready for it, because they were so busy in tackling the pandemic and the crisis and moving to online learning. Now, of course, we will continue showing flexibility depending on what will arrive. I would like to mention that actually we have launched a survey towards Erasmus Plus participants with a sample of 50,000 Erasmus Plus participants. The survey has just been launched a few days ago to get the feedback. It was very useful what you've done, ESN, and now we thought it would be useful a few weeks later to again see the situation from the participants' point of view. And we're going to launch a similar survey in the coming days towards the Erasmus Plus beneficiaries, meaning the organizations, including the higher education institutions, to assess the situation with them.
Perfect, thank you. We are very happy to see that we inspired you with this survey. Our initial idea was actually to have another survey in July, maybe in the summer, so we can actually compare to see what was in the situation at the beginning and what is the situation after the students leave their countries or they finish their mobility. So we can have this comparison to see what has changed and what lessons we can take out of it. But yeah, this is something that we are still exploring if we want to have a follow-up survey in the summer. But I'm very happy that I see that you also having this initiative, because the outreach will be much bigger, and then we'll have even more student voices heard with this survey. So moving on to the next question. Feel free to write your questions in the chat. Meanwhile, I will publish this one. Apart from the grant, will mobility is totally done remotely be recognized within the program? Vanessa, I think this is something that you addressed already, right?
Reply that any learning outcomes, whether they were reached through a virtual mode or physical mode, as long as this is within the learning agreement which have been agreed between the student and the sending and receiving institutions, yes, they should be fully recognized.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. I will take one last question, and then we can wrap it up here, I think, because it's already 1 hour and a half after the launching of the webinar. So I think this question is related to the extension of the charter. So I think, yeah, Vanessa, is also for you. So is there any possibility to extend again the deadline for the charter application? International relations offices and senior structures are struggling with the more urgent matters, and yeah, writing an Erasmus policy statement requires a lot of focus, consultation, etc., and extension would be really helpful.
Well, actually, we have already extended the deadline. I understand that it requires focus and consultation, at least for the charter. It doesn't need international cooperation. This consultation can be done within a given institution. So far we have not heard. Well, Stefania, I hear your request, but so far we haven't. This is the first time that I hear for such a request. So far we have received rather messages thanking us for the already extensions granted to the higher education institutions.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. I think we can wrap it up here. I will just, if you allow me, I will make also a statement on behalf of ESN. Yes, we are following the situation and we're trying to support the international students as much as we can. This is why we're trying to collect their concerns and the challenges, and then bring it to the European Commission and other decision makers to see how we can improve this situation. We are very happy to see all this flexibility and these rules that they have been applied to support the students. And when it comes to the online courses and online education, we are very happy that the students offered this alternative, because otherwise they could have stopped their Erasmus experience for all. So, but at the same time, although we believe that this is the best approach right now, we don't believe that this is that the students who are following digital courses, they are experiencing the full Erasmus, let's say, experience. It's not the same, but we don't have any other options right now. So we believe that online education, when it comes to the Erasmus Plus program, is a very nice alternative. And we are very happy to see that IROs and students can cover their expenses related to their mobility, even if it is done through online components. At the same time, we are a bit worried for the future. We do not want for this to be a normality. Because we believe that virtual mobility, as many people call it, but we do not agree with this. We have the stand that mobility cannot be done virtually. For us, Erasmus Plus is something that requires traveling. It requires to go to another country to meet other cultures, to meet new friends, and expand your horizons. And virtual can never replace the quality of the physical mobility. Of course, we understand that if we have a blended approach, so to combine the virtual and physical component, this will be the best solution. Now, it remains to be seen when it comes to the next semester. Probably, yes, some universities will not be ready to open physically again and accept mobilities. In that case, maybe also an alternative is to prolong this virtual learning. But we as ESN, we have the concern that we don't want to see this as a normality. And although we understand the importance of online education, we do not believe that this is something that can replace Erasmus Plus as it is known right now as a physical mobility. And yeah, there are many concerns that still we have to see in the future. For example, how many universities will be able to go back to open their mobilities again. We have seen many universities actually taking already the decision that they will stop the applications for the next semester, and we're a bit worried about this. But this is something that we have to see also in the future. At this point, I want also to check with my colleagues Rasmus and Wim if they have something, any final remark to mention after the survey and all the speakers. I don't know if you guys have anything to address here.
Maybe I can say one thing, maybe just to tell everyone that if you want to read the full report, it's available on esn.org/COVID impact report. Or if you just Google ESN COVID report, it'll be the first thing that you see. So by all means, go and check out the full report. What Wim and I presented was just a short summary of it.
Great, thank you, Rasmus. Wim? I don't know if you're here with us.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I said nothing from my side. Thank you very much, Kostis.
Okay, perfect. I read the last comments here on the chat that yeah, virtual mobility exists. It doesn't replace real physical mobility, indeed. And there is another question regarding the, sorry, I'm trying to read. I'll put it here. Yeah, according to you, COVID-19 will have a negative impact on the European student mobility, but for how long? When do you forecast a normal situation? This is a very good question. I think that we cannot provide a very exact answer, but I know that many organizations have done their own service. If I'm not mistaken, there was a survey also by EIE, which showed that the universities expect for everything to go back to normal in more than 2 years, I think. But I don't know if, as a last remark, because this is a very important thing to know, I don't know if Vanessa or somebody of the speakers wants to reply on this question. When do we see everything going back to normal? Maybe Vanessa, do you have any idea about this question? No, I cannot see Vanessa here. Anyway, for us, as I mentioned before, we will try to do our best to support the international students, and of course we want to see everything go back to normal as soon as possible. Maybe this is not the case for all the universities around Europe for the next semester, but we would like at least to see alternatives like virtual learning, as long as this doesn't become a normality. Yeah, I think that's it for the today's webinar. We hope that the information that we provided you from the side of ESN, but also from the European Commission and the European Parliament, was useful for you. Unfortunately, as you know, we cannot answer all the questions, and of course we don't have the answers ourselves. This is a process that we have to see also in the future, depending on the situation of the coronavirus and the coordinated approach that the member states and the countries will take in the future. Having said that, I would like to thank all the speakers for having the time to join today and presenting their information regarding the coronavirus and the impact that it has to the international students. Thank you, everyone, and we will be in touch. I will share with you the video recording in case that you experience any problems or you want to share it with anybody. Thank you again for joining, and we will share more information with you via the newsletters when it comes to the service that and the support that the ESN provides to international students. As of last remark, I know that I have said that many times. We believe that it's very important that universities, national Erasmus Plus national agencies, and other stakeholders to work together and closely with student organizations, not only ESN, but also student unions and other student organizations that provide support to students. We believe that if we have these synergies and this cooperation, then we will have more qualitative support to the international students. And yeah, that's it. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, stay safe. Bye-bye.